Emma Grace's small hands pressed against the cold glass window, her breath fogging the pain as 18 of the world's finest doctors surrounded baby Lily Rose's incubator. The mansion's golden nursery glowed with amber emergency lights at 3:47 a.m., million-dollar equipment failing in symphony with the infant's labored breathing. "Another specialist from Switzerland," William Thornton announced, his voice cracking as he waved a blank check. "Whatever it takes." Emma's torn shoes left prints in the morning dew, a sharp contrast to the Italian leather pacing inside. She'd watched for 6 months, noting what the doctors missed: how Lily's breathing worsened when the heating activated, how her skin flushed near the golden walls. "She's drowning in gold," Emma whispered to the darkness. "Can't you see?" With her finger, she began writing on the fogged window a chemical formula her late father had shown her once, the same formula that had killed him slowly, silently, brilliantly. Before we continue, please leave a like and let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. The Thornton estate sprawled across 47 rooms of lonely grandeur in suburban Boston, where marble corridors echoed with nothing but the whispers of money that couldn't buy warmth. 6 months ago, when spring had promised new beginnings, Emma Grace had moved into the converted carriage house after her mother's death, becoming another shadow in the estate's periphery. The servants' quarters, tucked behind overgrown hedges, provided the perfect vantage point for a child who had learned that observation meant survival. The crown jewel of the mansion was the golden nursery, imported Italian marble floors, hand-painted celestial ceiling depicting angels that seemed to weep in certain lights, and walls coated with the finest metallic paint that caught sunset like captured fire. William had spent $3 million creating this room before Lily was even conceived, as if luxury could guarantee love's presence. William Thornton, at 42, carried his pharmaceutical empire's legacy in his sharp jaw and gray temples, in eyes that had forgotten how to cry 10 years ago when he disowned his daughter Sarah for choosing a house painter over Harvard Law. He moved through board meetings and charity galas with the precision of a man who believed that control could be purchased, that grief could be managed like a hostile takeover. His wife's death during childbirth had only reinforced his faith in money's power to prevent further losses. Emma Grace worked 4 jobs despite being only 10 newspaper delivery at dawn: grocery bagger after school, church cleaner on weekends, and flower seller at the cemetery where both her parents now rested. She carried her father Michael's leather notebook everywhere, its pages filled with his careful handwriting about paint compositions and safety warnings that no one had wanted to hear. Her green eyes, inherited from Sarah, saw things others missed, while her gentle hands, Michael's legacy, knew how to coax beauty from broken things. Baby Lily Rose had arrived 3 weeks ago through a surrogate William had selected from hundreds of candidates, a miracle baby created from his late wife's frozen embryos, born with a mysterious respiratory condition that baffled specialists. She only seemed calm when Emma hummed near the window during her morning rounds. Dr. James Chen, the pediatric specialist whose reputation preceded him through 3 continents, carried a secret heavier than his medical degrees. He had been Michael Grace's only friend at the hospital, and he knew exactly who Emma was, knowledge that created a moral labyrinth between his oath and the truth. The storm that rolled into Boston at 9 o'clock that evening brought more than rain. It carried the weight of destiny on its shoulders. Inside the golden nursery, Lily Rose's breathing suddenly shifted from labored to desperate, her tiny chest pulling inward with each attempt to draw air. William's hands trembled as he made call after call, summoning specialists from 3 continents who abandoned their conferences and surgeries to race toward the Thornton mansion. Money moved through phone lines like electricity, chartering private jets and clearing international flight paths. Emma watched from the servants' corridor she'd discovered weeks ago, a forgotten passage that her mother Sarah must have known during her childhood here. Through a crack in the paneling, she could see everything: the Swiss doctor checking Lily's reflexes, the Japanese specialist reviewing brain scans, the team from Johns Hopkins setting up equipment that cost more than most people's homes. She pressed her father's notebook against her chest, its leather cover worn smooth from her constant touch. As the doctors worked, Emma noticed what they didn't: how Lily's symptoms worsened whenever the heating system cycled on, how her skin developed a faint rash near the golden walls, how her breathing eased slightly when nurses carried her toward the door. In her father's careful handwriting, She found notes about metallic paint containing rare mineral powder, the same substance that had killed 3 workers in his crew over 5 years. Their deaths had been attributed to unrelated causes, but Michael had known better. He'd tried to warn Williams' company, the very manufacturer of these luxury paints, and had been fired for spreading unfounded concerns. Dr. Chen moved through the room with practiced efficiency, but Emma caught him glancing toward the servants' panel where she hid. When their eyes met through the crack, he gave the slightest nod, not of greeting, but of confirmation. He knew what she knew. But speaking up would mean challenging William Thornton and 17 other doctors who saw only medical mysteries, not environmental poisons. At midnight, as the storm reached its crescendo, Emma climbed the narrow stairs to the carriage house attic. Rain drummed against the roof as she pulled out a dusty box hidden behind insulation her mother had installed just months ago. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper that still smelled faintly of Sarah's lavender perfume, were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to William Thornton, all unsent. Emma's hands shook as she read her mother's final note, written days before the heart attack that had claimed her life. My darling Emma, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. Watch over your sister. Yes, Lily is your sister. William doesn't know. But the surrogate carries my embryo, my gift of forgiveness to a father who couldn't forgive me. The Thorntons have gifts. Emma, gifts of seeing what others cannot. You have it stronger than any of us. Trust what you feel. Savor. Emma set down the letter and opened her father's notebook to the back pages, where he'd sketched ventilation plans for the mansion, including the golden nursery. He'd drawn arrows showing airflow, marked danger zones in red ink, and written a desperate note. White vinegar and baking soda can neutralize the off-gassing. Break the seal. Let air flow. Simple solutions for complex poisons. Below this, in different ink, added later, they won't listen. Money makes them deaf. She gathered what she needed: white vinegar from the cleaning supplies, baking soda from the kitchen pantry, her father's ventilation drawings, and courage borrowed from both parents' spirits. At 3 a.m, she knew the security guards would change shifts, creating a 15-minute window when the mansion's protection shifted from one set of eyes to another. This was her only chance. Emma walked across the wet grass, her worn shoes squelching with each step. The storm had passed, leaving a strange calm that made every sound seem amplified. Each footfall was a choice between the safety of shadows and the terrible risk of love. The golden nursery's windows glowed like 6 suns in the darkness, and inside them, her sister, her actual sister, was dying from the very wealth meant to protect her. At the servants' entrance, Emma pressed her small hand against the door handle Michael had once painted, feeling the chips and wear of years of use. She turned it slowly, knowing that beyond this threshold lay either Lily's salvation or her own destruction. Emma slipped through the servants' door, her wet shoes silent on the marble floor that her mother had once walked as a child. The corridor stretched before her, dimly lit by emergency lighting that cast long shadows against walls lined with forgotten portraits of Thornton ancestors. She could hear the urgent voices of doctors from the nursery above, their words floating down through the old ventilation shafts her father had mapped so carefully. As she reached the back staircase, a figure stepped from the shadows: Margaret O'Brien, the head nurse who had served the Thornton family for 30 years. Her steel-gray hair was pulled back in the same severe bun she'd worn since Sarah was a baby, and her eyes held the weight of too many family secrets. "Emma Grace," Margaret whispered. Not a question, but a statement of recognition. "You have your mother's way of moving through this house like you belong here." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs, but she stood straight, clutching her father's notebook. "You knew my mother. I delivered her in the room right above us," Margaret said, studying Emma's face in the pale light. "Watched her grow up. Watched her fall in love with your father. Watched William throw her out when she chose love over legacy." She paused, glancing up at the ceiling where footsteps hurried back and forth. "What are you doing here, child?" "Lily's dying," Emma said simply. not from disease, but from poison. The golden paint in her nursery, it contains rare mineral powder that off-gases when heated. My father knew. He tried to warn them. She opened the notebook, showing Margaret the detailed notes, the chemical formulas, the desperate warnings written in Michael's precise hand. Margaret's face changed. Years of professional composure cracking. Protocol says I should call security immediately. But you won't, Emma said, seeing something in the older woman's eyes. Because you remember holding my mother when she cried over choosing my father. Because you know what it's like to watch the Thorntons' money destroy what it claims to protect. Margaret was quiet for a long moment, then stepped aside. Hurry. Dr. Chen has been stalling them, but they're about to intubate the baby. Once they do that... She didn't finish, but Emma understood. Once machines took over Lily's breathing, it might be too late to reverse the damage. Emma raced up the servants' stairs, her small feet finding each step in near darkness. Guided by memory of 6 months of secret observation, she burst through the nursery's service door just as Dr. Wilson from Harvard was preparing the intubation equipment. Stop! Her voice cut through the room like glass breaking. 17 doctors turned as one, their faces registering shock, annoyance, then anger at the sight of a disheveled child in their sterile environment. William Thornton's face went from pale worry to red rage in seconds. How did this child get in here? He roared. Security! Emma didn't wait for them to grab her. She ran to the center of the room, holding up her father's notebook. The paint is killing her. The golden paint contains cerium oxide and thorium powder, rare minerals that create the shimmer but release toxic gases when heated. Every time your heating system cycles on, it's poisoning her. Dr. Morrison from Switzerland laughed. A cruel sound. This is absurd. A child playing doctor while we're trying to save a life. Someone remove her. Wait. Dr. Chen spoke for the first time in hours. Let her speak. James, you can't be serious, Dr. Wilson protested. We don't have time for fairy tales from the staff's children. I'm not staff, Emma said, blood rushing to her face. I'm Michael Grace's daughter. He was a painter who died from exposure to the same paint. He tried to warn Thornton Industries. Your company. She looked directly at William. But you fired him for spreading unfounded concerns. 3 of his crew died. Their deaths blamed on other causes. But he knew the truth. William's rage faltered, replaced by recognition. Grace, you're Sarah's child. Emma nodded, then turned to the doctors. Test the air quality near the walls versus near the door. Check her symptoms against heavy metal poisoning, not viral infection. Notice how she breathes easier when moved toward the windows, away from the heated walls. The doctors exchanged glances, some dismissive, others suddenly thoughtful. Dr. Chen moved to his equipment, pulling out an air quality sensor he'd brought but hadn't thought to use. The reading near the golden walls made him step back. Dear God, he whispered. The particulate levels. They're 3 times safe limits. Emma didn't wait for more confirmation. She grabbed a paperweight from William's desk, a crystal globe Sarah had given him for Father's Day 20 years ago, and threw it at the sealed window with all her 10-year-old strength. The window cracked but didn't break. Security guards rushed toward her, but she grabbed the weight again, ignoring the sharp edge that cut into her palm. This time, she didn't throw it, she ran at the window, slamming the crystal against the glass with both hands. The window shattered outward, safety glass cascading like frozen tears into the night. The force knocked Emma backward, her palms bleeding freely, leaving red handprints on the pristine floor. Cool, clean air rushed into the room, carrying the scent of rain and grass and life. No, doctor, Wilson shouted. The sterile environment. But his words died as everyone heard it. Lily Rose's first strong cry in 3 weeks. Not the weak whimper they'd grown accustomed to, but the full-throated wail of a baby who could finally breathe. Her color changed before their eyes, from dusky blue to healthy pink, as oxygen that wasn't tainted with invisible poison filled her tiny lungs. Emma struggled to her feet, blood dripping from her hands, and began to hum. It was an old lullaby, one her mother had sung to her, one that Sarah had learned from her own mother in this very house. The melody was simple, almost primitive, but Lily's cries softened, her eyes turning toward Emma's voice. William Thornton stood frozen, watching this bleeding child comfort his daughter with a song he hadn't heard in 10 years. A song Sarah used to hum when she was happy, before he'd driven her away with his demands for a proper marriage, a proper life, a proper everything that had nothing to do with actual love. The chemical reaction, Emma explained, her voice steady despite the pain in her hands, accelerates with heat. Every time your climate control system maintained exactly 72.5 degrees, the supposed perfect temperature for newborns, it was cooking poison into the air. My father discovered this when his crew started getting sick. They all worked in wealthy homes with the same paint, the same heating systems, the same slow death disguised as luxury. Dr. Chen was already running tests, his equipment confirming everything Emma said. The other doctors gathered around his screens, their faces shifting from skepticism to horror as the data accumulated. Thorium, cerium, lead derivatives masked by binding agents, all legal in tiny amounts, but concentrated in this room where every surface gleamed with golden death. "How long have you known?" William asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I've watched for 6 months," Emma replied, still humming between words to keep Lily calm. "Every morning, I left a flower on her windowsill. I took notes like my father taught me. I saw her breathing change with the temperature, her rash appear near the walls, her comfort increase during power outages when the heating stopped. I tried to tell the guards, but who listens to a child who delivers newspapers?" Margaret entered the room then, carrying clean towels for Emma's hands. As she wrapped the wounds, she looked at William. "Sir, there's something else you should know. This child." Emma looked at her eyes. William looked, truly looked, for the first time. Green eyes. Distinctive, Thornton green. The same shade as Sarah's, as his mother's, as the portrait of his grandmother hanging in the hallway. "She's your granddaughter, Mr. Thornton," Margaret said softly. "And she just saved your other granddaughter's life." The room fell silent except for the sound of clean air flowing through the broken window and Lily's steady breathing. William sank into a chair, his empire of control crumbling as he stared at the blood on the floor. Emma's blood, his granddaughter's blood, shed to save a sister she'd never been allowed to meet. "Dear God," he whispered, and for the first time in 10 years. William Thornton began to cry. The laboratory equipment arrived within the hour, wheeled into the Thornton mansion by technicians who worked in efficient silence. Dr. Chen supervised the air quality testing while other specialists took paint samples from the golden walls, their protective masks making them look like astronauts exploring an alien world. Every test confirmed what Emma had discovered through simple observation. The nursery was a beautiful tomb, its golden walls releasing invisible death with each degree of warmth. Cerium oxide at 40 parts per million. Dr. Chen read from his tablet. Thorium dioxide at 28 parts per million. Lead chromate masked with polymer binding agents. He looked up at his colleagues, his face grim. These levels would be illegal in any industrial setting, yet they're concentrated in a room designed for an infant. William stood by the broken window, holding Lily while Emma sat in a corner, her bandaged hands resting in her lap. The other doctors had retreated to the hallway, making phone calls to lawyers and insurance companies, distancing themselves from the liability nightmare unfolding before them. "The manufacturer knew," Dr. Schwaru, Morrison said, returning from a phone call with his research team. "I've just learned that Thornton Industries received 3 safety complaints about this particular paint formula in the past 5 years. All were settled quietly, sealed with non-disclosure agreements." William's jaw tightened. "That's impossible. I would have known." "Would you," Dr. Chen asked gently, "or would your board of directors have handled it like they handle all potentially damaging information with lawyers and money?" Emma pulled out her father's notebook, flipping to a page near the back. "February 15th, 3 years ago," she read. "Submitted safety report to Thornton Industries regarding atmospheric toxicity in Aurelius Gold Paint Series. Response termination letter citing undermining company reputation with unsubstantiated claims. She looked up at William. My father died 14 months later. Lung damage. The doctor said, occupational hazard for a painter. The test results continued to pour in, each more damning than the last. The paint hadn't just released toxins, it had been designed to bond with moisture in the air, creating an invisible film that coated everything, including the baby's lungs with each breath. The heating system, programmed to maintain perfect temperature, had essentially turned the nursery into a slow-cooking poison chamber. How did you know to use vinegar and baking soda? Dr. Wilson asked Emma, his earlier dismissiveness replaced with genuine curiosity. My father taught me chemistry through painting, Emma replied. He said understanding reactions could save lives. The acidic vapors from vinegar neutralize the alkaline mineral particles, while baking soda absorbs the heavy metals. It's not a cure, but it stops the reaction. She paused, looking at her bandaged hands. He wrote it all down, hoping someday someone would listen. As dawn broke over Boston, painting the sky the same gold as the toxic walls, William found himself drawn to Emma's notebook. She had fallen asleep in the chair, exhausted from the night's ordeal, and the leather journal had slipped from her lap. He picked it up carefully, recognizing Michael Grace's handwriting, but also seeing Emma's childish notes in the margins, observations about Lily's breathing patterns, sketches of the nursery's ventilation system, pressed flowers dated each morning for 6 months. One page made him stop breathing. It was a drawing of the mansion from the carriage house window, labeled Home I Can't Enter. Below it, in Emma's writing, Lily cried for 13 minutes today. I sang Mom's song from outside. She stopped. We're connected, even if no one knows. Margaret appeared beside him, carrying a box that looked older than the house itself. Mr. Thornton, there are things you need to see. She set the box on the table, its contents rustling with age. Sarah left these in the hospital storage when she last visited. She was pregnant then. Though she hid it well, she asked me to give these to you when the time was right. Inside were letters, dozens of them, each addressed to William in Sarah's distinctive handwriting. The first was dated 10 years ago, the day he'd thrown her out. Dear Dad, I'm writing this from the bus station. You can't see me, but I can see the house from here. I'm not angry. I understand that loving Michael means losing you, but I had to choose the love that lets me breathe. The Thornton money is like that golden paint you love, beautiful but suffocating. Michael sees me, not my last name or trust fund. I hope someday you understand. Your loving daughter, Sarah. William's hands shook as he read letter after letter, each one updating him on her life, her marriage, Emma's birth, Michael's struggles with work, their small joys and large sorrows. She wrote about Emma's strange gift, the ability to sense what others couldn't see, to feel disturbances in the air that preceded storms or sickness. July 8th. Emma knew the neighbor's baby was sick before the fever started. She kept pointing at their window and crying. 3 days later, they were in the hospital with meningitis. The doctors said early detection saved the child's life. Michael says she inherited the Thornton gift, the one you always denied having. Margaret watched William's face crumble with each revelation. Your father had it too, she said quietly. The ability to sense what others couldn't. He trained it out of you, said it made you weak. But Sarah had it stronger than anyone. And Emma, she gestured to the sleeping child, Emma has it even stronger. Dr. Chen had been standing in the doorway, and now he stepped forward. I need to tell you something. William, I knew Michael Grace. We met when he brought his crew to the emergency room, all of them sick with similar symptoms. He begged me to investigate, showed me his research. I wrote a report, submitted it to the hospital board. It was buried, and I was told to forget it or lose my position. Why didn't you say anything when Lily got sick? William asked, his voice hollow. Because I'm a coward, Chen admitted. But watching that child Emma show more courage than all of us combined, Michael would be proud. He talked about her constantly, said she was special, that she noticed things even he missed. As the morning progressed, more truth emerged from the buried past. Margaret brought out Sarah's medical records from her hidden pregnancy, revealing that she'd been suffering from the same heart condition that had killed William's mother, a condition that ran in the Thornton family but skipped generations. She knew she was dying, Margaret said. The pregnancy accelerated her heart condition. She could have terminated to save herself, but she wanted Emma to have a sibling, someone who would understand the gift. She arranged everything with the surrogate, her best friend Jennifer, using her own frozen embryos from a harvest years earlier when she'd first learned about her condition. William looked at Lily, sleeping peacefully in her hospital crib, then at Emma, curled in the chair like a guardian angel who'd finally earned her rest. They're full sisters. Biologically, yes. Sarah wanted to give you back a daughter, even if she couldn't be here herself. The surrogate was instructed to approach you, make you believe it was your late wife's embryos. Sarah thought if you raised Lily, eventually Emma would find her way to her sister. The sun climbed higher, streaming through the broken window, illuminating the toxic golden walls that were already being marked for removal. William noticed Emma stirring, her green eyes, Sarah's eyes blinking open with the wariness of a child who'd learned to wake quickly and assess danger. "Good morning," he said softly, the words feeling foreign after the night's revelations. Emma straightened, immediately checking on Lily. "Her breathing is steady. The fresh air is helping, but she'll need chelation therapy to remove the heavy metals from her system. My father wrote about it in his journal, vitamin C, cilantro extract, chlorella. Natural binders that hospitals ignore because they can't patent them." William studied this remarkable child who spoke of complex chemistry as easily as other children discussed cartoons. "How do you know all this?" "When you watch someone you love die from poison, you learn everything about poison," Emma said simply. "Dad made me promise to remember it all, to write it down, to be ready if anyone else got sick. He said knowledge was the only inheritance he could leave me." As the day wore on, William found himself drawn into Emma's world. She showed him her observation notes, 6 months of detailed records about Lily's condition. She'd tracked feeding times, crying patterns, skin color changes, even the way Lily's eyes tracked movement differently on high-temperature days versus cool ones. It was the work of a scientist trapped in a child's body, driven by love and desperation. "Why didn't you try harder to warn someone?" William asked, though he immediately regretted the question, seeing pain flash across Emma's face. "I tried," she whispered. "I wrote letters to the doctors, left notes for the nurses. But I'm the newspaper girl, the grocery bagger, the child who cleans churches for dollar bills. Who listens to someone like me when there are Harvard degrees and Swiss certifications in the room?" "Doctor," Chen spoke up from where he was reviewing Emma's notes. "She's documented things we missed entirely. Look at this. She noticed that Lily's symptoms followed a pattern based on barometric pressure changes. The paint reaction intensifies when atmospheric pressure drops, like before storms. It's brilliant." As afternoon turned to evening, something shifted in the nursery's atmosphere. The toxic golden walls were being covered with plastic sheeting, sealed for removal. The broken window had been properly opened, allowing constant fresh air flow. And in the center of it all, 2 sisters lay side by side in separate cribs that Emma had pushed together, their hands touching through the bars. William watched Emma sing to Lily, the same lullaby Sarah had once sung, and felt something break inside his chest, not his heart, but the cage he'd built around it. 10 years of anger, pride, and stubborn blindness crumbled as he saw Sarah in Emma's gentle care, Michael in her determined intelligence, and something unique to Emma herself, a fierce love that asked for nothing in return. "She needs you," Margaret said, appearing beside him. "Emma, she's been alone since Sarah died, working herself to exhaustion, living on bread and water most days to save money for the medicine she thought might help Lily if she ever got the chance." William looked at the bandages on Emma's hands, stained with blood from her sacrifice, and made a decision that would have seemed impossible just 24 hours ago. He walked to Emma's side and, for the first time, knelt to be at her eye level. "Emma," he said, his voice thick with emotion he'd forgotten how to express. "I'm sorry. For your father, for your mother, for all the years of—" "Don't," Emma interrupted, her green eyes steady. "Apologies don't raise the dead, but we can save the living. Lily needs both of us now. That's what matters." William nodded, recognizing Sarah's pragmatism, her ability to cut through sentiment to truth. "Then we save her. Together." "Saw you." As the sun set on this extraordinary day, casting natural light through the broken window instead of toxic golden reflections, 3 generations of Thorntons sat together for the first time, grandfather, granddaughter, and baby sister, bound by blood, tragedy, and the unexpected grace of a child who'd seen what money couldn't buy, the truth hidden in plain sight, the love that transcends loss, and the courage to break windows when breathing matters more than beauty. The hospital board convened their emergency meeting at 7 in the morning, barely 4 hours after Emma had shattered the window. The mahogany conference room at Massachusetts General filled with gray suits and grave faces, their purpose clear, contained the catastrophe before it became public. William sat at the far end of the table, Lily in a portable bassinet beside him, while Emma waited outside with Margaret, her bandaged hands folded in her lap. "The liability exposure is catastrophic," Harrison Wells, the chief legal counsel, announced, his voice cutting through the morning stillness. 17 doctors failed to diagnose environmental poisoning. If this reaches the media, every malpractice insurance carrier will drop us. We need to control the narrative immediately. Dr. Wilson leaned forward, his Swiss credentials no shield against American litigation. "The child broke into a sterile environment. She contaminated the scene. We could argue her interference prevented proper diagnosis. You want to blame Emma?" Dr. Chen stood abruptly, his usual composure cracking. "She saved that baby's life while we were preparing to intubate, which would have forced more poison into her lungs. We would have killed her with our protocols." "Dr. Chen, you seem particularly invested in defending this girl," Wells observed, his lawyer's instincts sensing weakness. "Perhaps you knew more than you initially disclosed. Your friendship with the father, Michael Grace, could be seen as compromising your judgment." "Enough." William's voice carried the authority of billions. "You want to discredit a 10-year-old child who did what 17 specialists couldn't. The same child who documented 6 months of observations that none of you bothered to notice." Wells shuffled his papers nervously. "Mr. Thornton, with respect, your emotional investment clouds your judgment. The board has already contacted a psychiatric specialist to evaluate the child's claims. We could suggest she's suffering from delusions brought on by grief, that her father's death created an obsession with paint toxicity." The conference room doors burst open. Richard Thornton strode in, his silver hair perfectly styled, his suit worth more than most people's cars. William's younger brother had always carried himself like heir apparent, waiting 40 years for his chance to claim the family empire. "I've just filed for emergency custody of Lily Rose," Richard announced, placing legal documents on the table. "My brother is clearly unfit. He endangered his own child with his negligence, then allowed a disturbed vagrant child to break into the nursery. I have a responsibility to protect the Thornton legacy." William rose slowly, his face pale. "Richard, you have no standing. I'm Lily's uncle and a board member of Thornton Industries. I also have this." Richard produced a tablet, swiping to display board meeting minutes. 3 years ago, we discussed the potential liability of the Aurelius Gold Paint series. You weren't present. William, too busy with your wife's cancer treatments. The board voted to continue production with minor formula adjustments. I abstained, of course. Emma had slipped into the room behind Richard, unnoticed in the chaos. She stepped forward, her small voice cutting through the tension. "You didn't abstain. You voted yes." Richard spun around, seeing the child for the first time. His face went white, then red. "Who is this?" "I'm Emma Grace, Sarah Thornton's daughter, your niece." She pulled out her father's notebook, flipping to a page near the back. "My father recorded everything, including a conversation he overheard between you and Jeremy Mills from the paint division. You said, and I quote, Pay off the sick workers. Seal the records. The profit margin on Aurelius Gold is too valuable to lose over a few dead painters." The room fell silent. Richard's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Emma continued, her voice steady despite her youth. "You also paid the coroner to change my father's cause of death from chemical poisoning to natural causes. Dr. Patricia Henley, the medical examiner. She deposited $50,000 in an offshore account 2 days after signing his death certificate. These are the ravings of a grief-stricken child," Richard sputtered, but sweat beaded on his forehead. "I have the bank records," Emma said simply. "Mom taught me to follow paper trails. She was an accountant before she married my father, trained at," she looked directly at William, "Thornton Industries, before you fired her for falling in love." Dr. Chen stepped forward. "I can corroborate the child's claims. Dr. Henley approached me after Michael Grace's death, asking if I wanted to revise my medical observations for a substantial fee. I refused and documented the conversation." The board members shifted uncomfortably, their loyalty to Richard wavering as liability shifted from medical malpractice to corporate conspiracy. Wells cleared his throat. "If these allegations are true, the criminal exposure would be massive." William finished. "Richard, you knew the paint was killing people. You knew, and you put it in my daughter's nursery anyway." Richard's composure finally cracked. It was already installed before the reports came in. The renovation was complete. I thought the ventilation system would handle any minor issues. How was I to know you'd seal the windows and run the heating constantly? Minor issues? Emma's voice rose for the first time, emotion breaking through her careful control. "My father couldn't breathe at the end. He coughed blood for 3 months. You call that minor?" Judge Catherine Morrison entered the conference room, having been summoned for the emergency custody hearing. A grandmother herself, she took in the scene the Billionaire brothers, the board of directors, the doctors, and the small girl with bandaged hands standing between them all. "I've reviewed the emergency filing," she announced. "This is highly irregular, but given the circumstances and the child's welfare at stake, I'll hear arguments now." Richard's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, William Thornton's negligence nearly killed his daughter. He installed toxic paint, ignored safety warnings, and allowed an unauthorized minor to break into a medical environment." "I saved her life," Emma interrupted, then caught herself. "I'm sorry, Your Honor. I know I'm supposed to be quiet." Judge Morrison studied Emma with interest. "Actually, young lady, I'd like to hear from you. You're Emma Grace Sarah Thornton's daughter." "Yes, Your Honor." "Tell me what happened. Take your time." Emma stood straighter, her green eyes clear and direct. "I've watched Lily every day since she was born. I'm her sister, her full biological sister. My mom arranged it before she died, using her frozen embryos. She wanted my grandfather to have another chance at being a father. To get it right this time." She paused, looking at William. "I saw Lily getting sicker as the room got warmer. I recognized the symptoms because I watched my father die from the same poison. I tried to tell people, but nobody listens to poor children." "So you broke the window?" the judge asked. "Yes, Your Honor. I knew it was wrong. But breathing is more important than rules. My mom taught me that sometimes you have to break things that look beautiful if they're hiding something rotten." Judge Morrison turned to William. "Mr. Thornton, do you acknowledge this child as your granddaughter?" William stood, walked to Emma, and placed his hand on her small shoulder. "I do, Your Honor. Emma is my granddaughter, Sarah's daughter, and she possesses more courage and intelligence than anyone in this room. I failed her mother, but I won't fail her." "And the custody matter," the judge asked. "Is withdrawn," Richard said quickly, his lawyer whispering urgently in his ear. "In light of new information, I withdraw my petition." Emma pulled out one more piece of paper from her father's notebook. "Before you go, Uncle Richard, this is a list of all the houses in Boston that still have Aurelius Gold paint. 43 families, including 7 with newborn babies. What are you going to do about it?" The room held its breath. Richard looked at the list, then at his brother, then at the child who had just destroyed his carefully constructed world with nothing but truth and courage. "I'll issue a recall," he said quietly. "Full refunds, medical monitoring, the works, and admission of fault." Emma pressed. "Emma," William warned gently, but she shook her head. "They need to know. Grandfather, other families need to know it wasn't their fault, that they didn't fail to protect their children. The truth matters more than money." Judge Morrison spoke before Richard could respond. "Mr. Richard Thornton, I strongly suggest you cooperate fully with what I'm certain will be a criminal investigation. As for custody of Lily Rose Thornton, she remains with her father. Furthermore, I'm granting Mr. William Thornton temporary emergency guardianship of Emma Grace, pending formal adoption proceedings if all parties agree." Emma looked up at William, surprise flickering across her composed features. "You want to adopt me?" "If you'll have me," William said, his voice rough. "I'm not much of a grandfather, but I'd like to learn." The courtroom fell silent as Emma considered this. She looked at Lily, sleeping peacefully despite the chaos, then at the uncle who'd poisoned her father, the doctors who'd failed her sister, the system that had ignored her for 6 months. Finally, she looked at William, flawed, broken, but trying. "Okay," she said simply, "but we're keeping the carriage house as my workshop. I have experiments to run." Dr. Chen laughed a surprising sound in the tense room. "Michael would be so proud. She has his mind and Sarah's heart." As the meeting dissolved, Richard slinking away with his lawyers, the board members scrambling to contain the looming scandal, Emma walked to Lily's bassinet. She hummed softly, the lullaby that connected 3 generations of Thornton women, and made a promise to the sister she'd saved. "We're going to change things, Lily. We're going to make sure nobody else's father dies for pretty walls. Grandfather has the money, but we have something better. We have the truth, and we're not afraid to use it." William stood beside her. Grandfather and granddaughter united for the first time, watching Lily breathe freely. The golden walls would come down. The poison would be purged. But what they were building, a family forged in truth rather than wealth that would endure. 25 hours after Emma had shattered the window, after custody battles and corporate scandals, after truth had finally pierced through decades of denial, Lily Rose's tiny body betrayed them all. The seizure started subtly, a tremor in her left hand that Emma noticed first from where she sat reading her father's notebook aloud. Then Lily's eyes rolled back, her small body going rigid in the hospital crib they'd moved her to for monitoring. "No, no, no." Emma dropped the notebook, pressing the emergency button as Lily's body began to convulse. She was getting better. The room flooded with medical personnel. Dr. Chen at the lead, his face grave as he checked Lily's vitals. William rushed in from the hallway where he'd been arranging Emma's emergency guardianship papers, his face draining of color as he saw his infant daughter seizing. "The heavy metals," Dr. Chen explained quickly as they wheeled Lily toward the pediatric ICU. "We underestimated how much she'd absorbed over 3 weeks. It's concentrated in her nervous system. Her improvement was superficial. The real damage was hidden deeper." Emma ran alongside the gurney, her exhaustion forgotten. But as they reached the ICU doors, her legs buckled. Margaret caught her just before she hit the floor, feeling the heat radiating from the child's skin. "She's burning up," Margaret announced, her nursing instincts overriding protocol as she pressed her hand to Emma's forehead. "This child has been running on adrenaline for days. Her wounds—" She carefully unwrapped Emma's bandages, revealing angry red streaks running up her arms from the cuts. "Blood poisoning. These cuts were deeper than we thought, and she's been hiding the pain." William found himself torn between 2 crisis points, his infant daughter seizing in one room, his granddaughter collapsing from infection in another. For a man who had controlled empires with spreadsheets and phone calls, the helplessness was suffocating. "Take care of Emma," Dr. Chen said firmly. "I'll handle Lily. We need them both to survive this." As nurses rushed Emma to treatment, William did something he hadn't done since his wife's death. He went to the hospital chapel. The small room was empty at this hour, just rows of wooden pews facing a simple stained glass window. He fell to his knees, not gracefully but desperately, like a man who'd forgotten how to pray, finally remembering the words. "I don't deserve mercy," he whispered to the silence. "I threw Sarah out. I let Michael die unheard. I nearly killed my own daughter with my pride. But Emma, she's pure goodness. She's everything I failed to be. Please, don't let my sins cost another innocent life." 30 minutes later, Dr. Chen found William still kneeling, his expensive suit wrinkled, his carefully controlled facade completely shattered. "William, you need to come now. Both girls. It's complicated." In the ICU, Emma lay in a bed that dwarfed her small frame, IV lines feeding antibiotics into her system. Her fever had broken, but she was delirious, speaking to someone only she could see. "Mom, I tried," she murmured, her eyes unfocused. "I saved Lily like you asked, but I'm so tired. My chest hurts like yours did at the end." Dr. Chen pulled William aside, his voice low. "We've discovered something in Emma's blood work. She has the same congenital heart condition that killed Sarah, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's been dormant, but the stress, the infection, the exhaustion, it's triggering cardiac symptoms." "Can you treat it?" William's voice cracked. "Yes, but there's a complication. Lily needs a blood transfusion. The chelation therapy to remove the heavy metals requires matched blood to prevent rejection. Emma has the same rare blood type, or null. It's found in less than 50 people worldwide. We've checked every blood bank in New England. Emma is the only match within transport distance." William felt the floor shift beneath him. If Emma donates blood while she's fighting infection with a heart condition, it could trigger a cardiac event. Dr. Chen confirmed. The stress on her system would be enormous, but without the transfusion, Lily's seizures will worsen. We're looking at permanent brain damage within hours. Through her fever, Emma's eyes suddenly focused, landing on Dr. Chen with startling clarity. "I can hear you," she said, her voice stronger than it should have been. "My mom is here, not really, but here. She says the Thornton gift isn't just seeing things others miss. It's knowing when to sacrifice the small for the great." "Emma, you're not small," William protested, moving to her bedside. "You're everything. I just found you. I can't lose you too." Emma's hand found his, her grip surprisingly strong. "Grandfather, what did my mother choose when she knew pregnancy would kill her? She chose Lily. She chose giving you another chance." She looked at the monitors showing Lily's deteriorating condition. "Sisters don't calculate risks. They just love." "This is different," William argued. "You're a child. You shouldn't have to make this choice." "I've been making adult choices since I was 8, Emma replied quietly. "When Dad got too sick to work, I forged his signature on his job so we could keep getting paid. When Mom's heart started failing, I learned to use the defibrillator by watching YouTube videos. I've already lived more life than some adults ever do." Dr. Chen checked Lily's latest neurological readings, his face increasingly grim. "We need to decide now. Every minute increases the risk of permanent damage." Emma struggled to sit up, her face flushing with effort. "Do you know why I really broke that window? Not just to let air in, but because I could feel Lily dying. The Thornton gift, we're connected by blood in ways medicine doesn't understand. Right now, I can feel her fear. She's trapped in darkness, and she's so small, so alone." Margaret entered with the blood donation equipment, her face etched with a lifetime of hard medical choices. "Emma, honey, you understand what you're risking. I understand that I spent 6 months watching my sister from outside, leaving flowers she'll never remember, singing songs she couldn't hear clearly. I understand that my father died thinking his work meant nothing, that my mother died believing she'd failed both her daughters. I understand that sometimes the only wealth that matters is what you're willing to give away." William's hands shook as he signed the consent forms, each signature feeling like it might be signing Emma's death warrant. But as they prepared her for the donation, something remarkable happened. Emma's vitals stabilized. Her heart rate, which had been erratic, smoothed into a steady rhythm. Her fever, which had spiked dangerously, began to drop. "It's like her body knows," Margaret whispered in amazement. "Like it's preparing itself for what needs to be done." As the needle entered Emma's arm, she looked directly at William. "Hold my hand. Mom says that's important, that Thorntons are strongest when they hold on to each other." William gripped her small hand in both of his, feeling the bird-like bones, the calluses from her many jobs, the strength that defied her size. As Emma's blood began flowing through the tubes, dark red and precious beyond any monetary value, she began to hum that same lullaby, Sarah's lullaby, now truly Emma's own. "Tell me about my mother," Emma said softly. "Not the sad parts. Tell me what she loved." As William began to speak about Sarah's laugh, her terrible cooking, her ability to find four-leaf clovers everywhere, Emma's blood flowed steadily toward Lily. The cardiac monitors watched Emma's heart carefully, alert for any sign of distress. But Emma's heart, the damaged heart that had already survived so much, beat steadily on. Dr. Chen monitored both girls, his hand steady even as his eyes misted. He thought of Michael Grace, of the conversations they'd had about Emma's special gift, about the legacy of truth he'd wanted to leave. Michael would have been proud beyond measure of this child who gave everything without counting the cost. 40 minutes later, as the donation neared completion, Emma's eyes began to flutter. Her heart rate dropped suddenly, setting off alarms. William's grip tightened as Dr. Chen rushed to her side. "Emma, stay with us," William pleaded. "Please, I need more time. I need to make things right." Emma's eyes opened one more time, focusing on something beyond the room. "Mom says it's not about time," she whispered. "It's about truth. And the truth is, love doesn't count the cost." As Emma's eyes closed and her heart monitor began its dangerous dance between beats, Lily's seizures suddenly stopped. Her eyes opened, clear and bright, looking directly at the bed where her sister lay dying for her. And she let out a single, perfect cry, not of distress, but of recognition, as if she finally understood who had been singing to her all along. Margaret O'Brien moved through the hospital storage room with purpose, her master key opening doors that hadn't been touched in years. Hour 36 of this crisis had revealed more family secrets than 40 years of service. But one box remained, the one Sarah had made her promise to protect until the right moment. As Emma lay unconscious and Lily's recovery began, Margaret knew that moment had arrived. She returned to William's side, carrying a box wrapped in brown paper. Sarah's handwriting across the top. "For Dad, when you're ready to remember, love is stronger than pride." She brought this 3 months before she died, Margaret explained, setting it carefully on the table. She was so weak she could barely walk, but she insisted on coming herself. "She made me promise to give it to you," when her exact words, "when Emma saves him from himself." William's trembling hands opened the box, revealing dozens of letters, each dated precisely 1 month apart for 10 years. The first was worn at the edges, as if Sarah had carried it for days before deciding not to send it. "Dear Dad, it's been a week since you told me to choose between Michael and the family. I'm writing from our new apartment 2 rooms above a bakery. The smell of bread makes morning sickness bearable. I know you think I've thrown my life away, but Dad, I can finally breathe. The Thornton money was like golden handcuffs, beautiful but binding. Michael sees me, not my trust fund or my last name. He makes me laugh the way Mom used to make you laugh. Before the money grew so large it blocked everything else. I'm not writing to change your mind. I'm writing so you know I love you, even from exile. Your daughter, always. Sarah." Each letter chronicled a life. William had missed Sarah's wedding in a courthouse, Emma's birth during a snowstorm, Michael's struggles to find work after speaking truth about paint safety, small victories and large defeats. One letter, dated 3 years ago, made William's blood run cold. "Dad, Michael is dying. The doctors call it occupational exposure. But we know the truth. It's the Aurelius gold paint, your company's greatest profit maker and my husband's slow executioner. He doesn't blame you. Last night, he wrote you a letter of forgiveness. He says hatred is another kind of poison, and he won't let it touch Emma. She's special. Dad. She has the gift grandmother Alice had, the one you were trained to suppress. She sees what others miss, feels what others ignore. Yesterday, she knew Mrs. Chen was pregnant before Mrs. Chen knew herself. Michael says it's the Thornton heritage breaking free from its golden cage. At the bottom of the box lay an envelope addressed to William in Michael's careful script. Inside, his letter was brief but profound. Mr. Thornton, I'm dying from your paint, but I'm writing to thank you. Without your rejection, Sarah might never have found the courage to live authentically. Without your money as a barrier, she learned her own worth. Emma exists because you pushed Sarah toward real love instead of arranged advantage. I forgive you for the paint, for the firing, for the years of silence. I only ask that someday, when Emma needs you, you remember that she carries both our bloodlines, your intelligence and ambition, our love and truth. She'll need both to survive what's coming. Your son-in-law in spirit, if not in law, Michael Grace. Beneath the letters lay a small digital recorder with a note. Emma, my darling girl, please play this for your grandfather when you meet him. Love, Mom. William pressed play with shaking fingers, and Sarah's voice filled the room, weak but warm. Emma, if you're hearing this, it means you found him. I knew you would. Thornton women always find what they're looking for. Dad, if you're listening, please understand I didn't leave you. I left the prison you'd built for us both. The Thornton gift isn't about money or power. It's about seeing clearly through walls, through lies, through the pretty poisons we paint over truth. Emma has it stronger than any of us. She'll terrify you with her clarity, challenge you with her questions. But Dad, she's your redemption if you let her be. Dr. Chen entered quietly, having given William time with the letters. There's more you need to know, he said, about your family's medical history, things that might explain Emma's abilities. He handed William a file marked Thornton Family, Confidential, from the hospital's genetic research department. Your grandmother, Alice Thornton, was part of a Johns Hopkins study in the 1920s on what they called hypersensory perception. She could detect illnesses before symptoms appeared, sense chemical imbalances in people's bodies. Your father enrolled you in a correction program when you showed similar abilities at age 7. William's hand went to his temple, memories flooding back. The treatments. Father said they would make me stronger, more focused on business instead of distractions. Electroshock therapy disguised as medical innovation, Dr. Chen confirmed. Your father believed the gift was weakness, that feeling others' pain would prevent you from making hard business decisions. He literally shocked it out of you. But genetics doesn't forget. Sarah had it, and Emma has it at a level we've never documented. Margaret spoke up from where she'd been monitoring Emma's vitals. That's how she knew about the paint. She wasn't just observing Lily. She was feeling her distress on a cellular level. Every labored breath Lily took, Emma felt in her own chest. It's why she looked so exhausted, Dr. Chen added. She's been experiencing Lily's poisoning symptoms while fighting them off with her stronger immune system. She's been sick for 6 months, hiding it while saving her sister. William stared at Emma's unconscious form, seeing her clearly for the first time not as a poor child who'd stumbled into their lives, but as the culmination of generations of suppressed gifts finally breaking free. Jennifer Hayes, the surrogate who'd carried Lily, appeared in the doorway. She'd driven from New Hampshire after seeing the news, her face drawn with guilt and determination. Mr. Thornton, I need to tell you the truth about Lily. William looked up, exhausted beyond measure. What more could there be? Jennifer pulled out her own worn letter, this one in Sarah's handwriting. Sarah was my best friend from nursing school. When she learned about her heart condition, she had her eggs harvested and frozen. She knew she'd die young, knew Emma would need family. She paid me to approach you, to lie about the embryos being your wife's. They're Sarah's. Lily is Sarah's biological daughter, Emma's full sister, your granddaughter by blood, not just by chance. The room fell silent as this final piece clicked into place. William looked at Lily, healthy now with Emma's blood flowing through her veins, and saw Sarah's nose, her chin, the shape of her eyes. "She gave me back my daughter," he whispered. "Even after everything, Sarah gave me another chance." Dr. Chen had one more revelation, the one that completed the circle. "William, I've researched the paint formula. Thornton Industries didn't just manufacture it recently. Your father created the original version in 1963. It was called Executive Gold then, marketed to luxury hotels and government buildings. The formula was banned in 1975 after congressional hearings, but someone in your company found a way to resurrect it with minor modifications that skirted regulations." "My God," William breathed. "We've been poisoning people for 60 years. Michael Grace figured it out." Dr. Chen continued. "He found the connection between the old formula and the new one, traced the chemical lineage. He tried to present it at a board meeting, but Richard had him removed by security. That was the day he was fired. He spent his last months documenting everything, teaching Emma the chemistry so someone would remember." Emma stirred slightly, her lips moving. Margaret leaned close to hear her whispered words. "The golden circle. It always comes back. We poison ourselves with our own pride." William stood and walked to the window, looking out at Boston's skyline, counting the buildings he knew contained Aurelius gold paint. His empire of wealth had become an empire of poison, his legacy one of beautiful death. "The cosmic justice of it," he said quietly. "I threw Sarah out for choosing love over money. The money I chose was literally toxic. My granddaughter nearly died from the very paint my father invented, that my brother protected, that I ignored. We've been killing ourselves slowly, generation by generation, with our own product." Dr. Chen placed a hand on William's shoulder. But Emma broke the cycle. She saw what none of us could see, spoke truth when we were all too frightened or comfortable to speak. Michael's knowledge, Sarah's love, and Emma's courage together, they've exposed 60 years of corporate murder. Margaret checked Emma's monitors again, noting with relief that her heart rhythm had stabilized. "She's strong, Mr. Thornton. Stronger than the poison, stronger than the lies, stronger than all of us who stayed silent. She's going to survive this." "And when she does," William asked, though he already knew the answer. "When she does," Dr. Chen said firmly, "she's going to help you tear down everything beautiful that hides something rotten. She's going to make you use Thornton money for Thornton redemption. She's your conscience. William, the one your father tried to shock out of you, returned in the form of a 10-year-old girl who won't let you look away." As if responding to her name in their conversation, Emma's eyes fluttered open. She looked directly at William. Her green eyes, Sarah's eyes. Alice Thornton's eyes, clear and knowing. "Grandfather," she whispered, "the truth about our family isn't the poison we made. It's the gift we buried. I'm here to dig it up." William knelt beside her bed, taking her bandaged hand in his. For the first time in 40 years, he felt it, the pain in her chest from the heart condition, the ache in her hands from the cuts, the exhaustion in her bones from carrying everyone else's suffering. His father's training broke completely, and William Thornton remembered how to feel. "It hurts," he gasped, experiencing Emma's pain as his own. "Yes," Emma said simply. "But now you can feel it. You can heal it. That's the real Thornton gift, not avoiding pain, but transforming it into purpose." As the 40th hour approached, 3 generations of Thorntons were finally united in truth. The letters were spread across the table, evidence of love that refused to die. The medical files revealed gifts that refused to stay buried. and in 2 hospital beds. Sisters by blood and choice breathed freely, their grandfather between them, learning that the greatest wealth was what he'd nearly thrown away: the ability to feel, to love, to sacrifice without counting the cost. The 45th hour brought a miracle wrapped in simplicity. Emma's eyes opened fully, focusing on the ceiling tiles she'd been staring at unseeing for hours. Beside her, Lily Rose slept peacefully, her breathing synchronized with her sister's as if they'd rehearsed this rhythm in the womb they'd never shared. William sat between their beds, his vigil unbroken, his hand holding Emma's while his eyes watched Lily's chest rise and fall with healthy breaths. "Grandfather," Emma said, her voice stronger than it had any right to be after her ordeal. "You look terrible." William laughed, a rusty sound that hadn't escaped his throat in years. "You nearly died saving your sister, and you're critiquing my appearance." "Someone has to," Emma replied, attempting to sit up. "When's the last time you ate actual food, not hospital coffee and guilt?" Margaret bustled in with a tray of soup and sandwiches, having anticipated this moment. "The child speaks wisdom. Mr. Thornton. You can't rebuild a family on an empty stomach." As William reluctantly ate, Emma turned to study Lily. The baby's color had transformed from the dusky blue of poison to the pink of health. Her tiny fingers curled around a corner of Emma's hospital blanket that Margaret had tucked into her crib. "She knows me," Emma said with wonder. "Even though we've never properly met, she knows me." Dr. Chen entered with the latest test results, his face showing the first genuine smile since this crisis began. "Both girls' blood work is remarkable. Lily's heavy metal levels have dropped by 70%. Emma's blood didn't just save her. It seems to have activated her own detox mechanisms. And Emma," he turned to the older girl, "your heart rhythm has stabilized completely. It's as if the act of saving Lily somehow regulated your own condition." "The Thornton gift," Margaret said quietly. Alice Thornton's journals mentioned something similar: family members healing through connection, their bodies communicating in ways medicine doesn't understand. Over the next 3 hours, as dawn approached on the second day, the room filled with natural light, not the artificial golden glow of toxic paint, but real sunlight streaming through windows that would never be sealed again. William had maintenance remove every window lock in the mansion during the night, declaring that houses need to breathe as much as people do. Emma managed to stand, wobbling slightly before finding her balance. She walked the 3 steps to Lily's crib and picked up her sister for the first time. The baby settled against her chest as if she'd always belonged there, her tiny hand grasping Emma's hospital gown. "Hello, sister," Emma whispered. "I'm sorry we had to meet like this, but Mom always said Thornton women make dramatic entrances." William watched them, his granddaughters, seeing Sarah in both their faces, Emma's determined jaw, Lily's delicate nose, the way they both seemed to glow with an inner light that had nothing to do with money or status. "The nursery," he said suddenly. "We need to talk about the nursery." Emma looked up. "Burn it down." "I was thinking more along the lines of complete renovation, but I appreciate your enthusiasm," William replied dryly, then more seriously. "What should a baby's room really look like, Emma? You've studied this. You know what children actually need." Emma shifted Lily to one arm with the natural grace of a child who'd helped raise herself. "Simple. Clean, white walls that can be washed, windows that open, plants that clean the air, spider plants, peace lilies, Boston ferns, wooden furniture without varnish, cotton fabrics without chemical treatments, a rocking chair by the window where someone who loves her can sing without worrying about disturbing important meetings." "Design it," William said immediately. "Whatever you think is right, design it." "I'm 10, Emma reminded him. "You're also the only person in this entire situation who saw clearly. I'll hire architects and contractors, but you'll approve everything. Nothing gets installed without your inspection." 3 hours later, William stood before a hastily assembled press conference in the hospital lobby. Emma had refused to appear, saying truth doesn't need a spotlight, but she watched from a doorway, holding Lily while Margaret stood protective guard. Thornton Industries has manufactured and sold toxic paint for 60 years, William began. No prepared statement, just truth. We knew. We were warned. We buried the reports, paid off the victims, and continued poisoning families for profit. My own granddaughter nearly died from paint my father invented. My brother protected, and I ignored. The reporters erupted with questions, but William held up his hand. Every family with Aurelius Gold or Executive Gold paint will receive full remediation at our expense. Medical monitoring for anyone exposed. Compensation without litigation, real money, not legal delays. The entire paint division will be restructured under new leadership, with a board of safety advocates including family members of victims. Who exposed this? Mr. Thornton. A reporter called out. William's eyes found Emma in the doorway. A 10-year-old girl who delivered newspapers to earn money for her sister's medicine. A child who saw what Harvard-educated doctors missed. My granddaughter, Emma Grace, daughter of Michael and Sarah Grace, two people who died telling truths I was too wealthy to hear. He announced the Michael Grace Foundation for Worker Safety, with Emma as its youngest board member. He announced the Sarah Thornton Center for Environmental Health, where families could get free testing for household toxins. He announced his resignation as CEO, effective immediately, planning to spend his remaining years learning from Emma how to see clearly. Richard Thornton was arrested that afternoon on charges of corporate manslaughter, the investigation revealing decades of suppressed safety reports and bribed officials. As they led him away, he passed Emma in the hospital corridor. You destroyed everything, he hissed. No, Emma replied calmly. I revealed what was already rotten. Grandmother Alice used to say that gold paint can't fix a crumbling foundation. You were always crumbling. Uncle Richard, we just opened the windows so everyone could see. 6 months later, the Thornton mansion had transformed beyond recognition. The golden nursery was now white and green, filled with plants Emma had researched for their air-purifying properties. The 47 rooms had been reduced to 12, the rest converted into the Sarah Thornton Center, where families affected by toxic exposure received free treatment. Emma had officially become a Thornton, the adoption finalized by Judge Morrison, who noted it was the first time she'd seen a child adopt a grandfather as much as the reverse. She still lived in the carriage house, now properly renovated, but maintaining what Emma called its honest character, using it as her laboratory for testing household products and developing safer alternatives. Lily, now 9 months old, had grown strong and vibrant, her development exceeding all expectations. She could already stand. Her first word had been Emma, and she possessed an uncanny ability to sense when people were sad, crawling to them with a soggy cookie or a favorite toy as comfort. The anniversary of Sarah's death arrived on a brilliant October morning. William, Emma, and Lily sat in the cemetery, not in mourning but in celebration. Emma had planted wildflowers on both parents' graves, the kind that grew despite neglect, that thrived without fertilizer, that bloomed honest and true. Your mother saved us all, William told Emma, watching Lily chase a butterfly with determined wobbling steps. Her death, her letters, her planning, she orchestrated our redemption from beyond. Emma shook her head. She just planted seeds. Grandfather, we chose to let them grow. They walked home through Boston Common, grandfather and granddaughters, their wealth now measured in different currency. The Thornton fortune had shrunk by 60%, poured into remediation and compensation. But William had never felt richer. He could feel again, truly feel the warmth of Lily's hand in his, the pride in Emma's voice as she explained her latest safety innovation to curious passers-by. At the mansion-turned-healing center, they found Dr. Chen waiting with a delegation from the World Health Organization. Emma's protocols for identifying household toxins had gained international attention, her simple tests saving lives across economic boundaries. They want you to speak at their conference, Dr. Chen explained, the youngest presenter in WHO history. Emma considered this. then shook her head. I'll write it down, but someone else can read it. I have work to do here. She gestured to the center's waiting room, full of families seeking help. These people need truth more than the WHO needs speeches. That evening, as William read bedtime stories to Lily while Emma worked on her latest detection method for lead in water, he thought about the cost of truth. It had cost him his company's reputation, his brother's freedom, 60% of his fortune. But it had given him something worth infinitely more: two granddaughters who loved him not for his money, but for his willingness to change, a purpose beyond profit, and the ability to sleep without the weight of hidden graves. Emma looked up from her work, catching his eye. Grandfather, do you regret it, losing all that money? William pulled her into a one-armed hug while keeping Lily balanced on his other knee. Emma, I spent 40 years building wealth on poison. You spent 10 years building wisdom on truth. Which of us was actually rich? Emma smiled Sarah's smile, but also uniquely her own. We're rich now. We have each other. We have purpose. And we have windows that open. As night fell over Boston, the Thornton mansion glowed with different light, not the toxic shimmer of Aurelius gold, but the warm illumination of lives lived honestly. In the carriage house laboratory, Emma's latest experiment bubbled safely. In the nursery, Lily slept peacefully, her breathing clear and strong. And in his study, William Thornton wrote checks to victims' families, each signature a small redemption, each payment a step toward peace. The newspaper Emma had once delivered now carried a different headline: Former billionaire finds true fortune in 10-year-old's truth. But Emma didn't deliver papers anymore. She was too busy saving lives, one honest observation at a time, proving that the greatest inheritance isn't money or property, but the courage to see clearly and speak truly, no matter the cost. The last entry in Michael Grace's journal, which Emma had added in her own careful handwriting, read, Dad always said paint could transform anything. He was right. The truth is the most powerful paint of all. It strips away false beauty to reveal what's real underneath. And what's real, if we're brave enough to see it, is always more beautiful than gold. You know, friend, as I share Emma's story with you, I find myself thinking about my own family, the windows we've sealed shut, the poison we've painted over with pretty lies. We all have our Aurelius gold, don't we? Those beautiful toxins we choose because they shine brighter than truth. I've learned from Emma that gratitude isn't about being thankful for what we have, but recognizing what we've been given through loss. Sarah's death gave William his conscience back. Michael's sacrifice gave Emma the knowledge to save lives. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in grief. But here's what strikes me most: family isn't about blood or money or even shared history. It's about who shows up when you're dying from invisible poison, who breaks windows when you can't breathe, who bleeds for you without counting the cost. Emma and Lily were sisters before they ever met, connected by a love that transcended death itself. We're all delivering newspapers outside someone's window, watching them suffer behind golden walls. The question is, will we stay silent because we're just the help, or will we grab that paperweight and shatter the glass? Because family, real family, means breaking beautiful things to let each other breathe.